Warning, the following podcast may cause you to question your belief in government, disregard authority, get arrested, be disowned, or deported. Welcome to the new School of Anarchy podcast. In a totally manipulative and calculated way, we've decided to rebrand the podcast away from the Latin title, as it appears that everyone thought we would be speaking Latin during the entire podcast, and as that's obviously not the case that either of us speak Latin, we decided it would be better for a new name and something more to the point of what the show is all about.
To all of you who are disappointed that this is not now in Latin, we don't really care.
Before we get started today, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the blog, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, like our blog posts, do all of those things that will share the curmudgeons with everyone else that you know. You can find links to our Facebook page, our Twitter feeds, and everything else in the show notes of this podcast.
This is the Olympics Reveal More About You Than You Realize edition of the podcast.
On this episode, we're going to talk about who's winning and losing the Olympics, the Crotchlight suits, and give you an update on that, who's cheating at the Olympics, and finally, whether there will be any more Olympics. All right, so the first thing I want to do is give everyone an update on who is actually winning the Olympics, because as we all know, that is the most important thing.
I'm winning the Olympics.
I think anyone who is not watching the Olympics is winning.
Oh, wow. See, I don't agree with that at all.
I am actually watching some of the Olympics.
Okay, all right. I do like how individualistic the Winter Games always tended to be, as opposed to the Summer Games. I feel like the Summer Games used to always have the sports like baseball, not soccer, crap, that's never been an Olympic sport, has it?
I certainly hope not.
All those volleyball, all those things are so team-oriented. Whereas the Winter Olympics, you have one guy going down the hill on skis, that sort of thing. But I've noticed this year they're trying to ruin that concept even, because now suddenly there's figure skating team event. What the heck?
Figure skating team. As if figure skating was a sport to begin with.
You got a good point there.
I did hear even one of the athletes say something about the difference between the fake events that have judges and the ones where there's a clock,
Right.
Which I've always thought that about any sporting event. If there's a judge involved, other than like a guy to check the clock.
A referee is fine.
A referee is fine.
Yeah. And I get that there's going to be some subjectivity on some of the things, but there's so many style points awarded to all this stuff now. It's like, just continue to have your X Games or your
exactly
Diet Do Games or whatever they are these days.
Is that a thing?
You know what? I don't know. That's what all the ads are for. Do you know that?
Well, so I pulled up the NBC medals race. This is what they call it, their website. And actually, I looked at this last night, and last night the Netherlands was in first place, so to speak, with the most total medals. Team America was in second place, and someone else who we don't care about because they're behind us was in third place.
There's been a fortunate change
There's been
this podcast.
There has been a change since we just pulled it up. Russia has pulled into the lead with 15 total medals. The Netherlands is now in second place, and Team America lagging behind in third place.
The world police just can't get it done this year.
They're not doing enough sabotage, apparently. We'll talk about that later. So, and the total medals is tied between Netherlands and America, 14 apiece, but the Netherlands has 4 silver medals, and we only have 3. See, I said we.
Wow.
See, it's ingrained.
Tool.
Exactly.
Yeah. The disturbing part about this is how ingrained it is. Even my children, and I think if you've listened to this podcast or read the blog at all, I think you've realized that my kids have been growing up quite a bit differently than most kids in America. Even my kids have this attachment to the Americans. Like, we want the American to win. And it's disturbing to me, but at the same time, it does make me happy that they started off being frustrated when I would root for the Russian or the Swedish person, because, they just seemed like they knew what they were doing, You got to root for Norway when it comes to cross-country skiing, because they're going to win.
Yep.
They're just good at this. This is what they do. And it's good to see my kids coming around to that idea. hey, we can root for other countries. We don't have to root for the American just because we're in this geographic
with
place
the line
at this point of time.
Yep. Yeah, I've always thought that about the one sport that's like that with these big events is tennis, where you will, there's virtually or very little, I think, nationalism when it comes to just the fans in the stadium at like the U.S. Open, right? They will cheer for whoever it is.
Sure.
They'll cheer for both sides in the same match if they make a good shot, right? Or
tennis is a great sport.
It is a great sport. I know they've ruined it with some of the NFL like security procedures, but yeah, there's just no getting around the Team America stuff in the Olympics. But you're right. It's probably a good teachable moment, as they say, for your kids.
I think so.
So Russia kicking everyone's butt for now.
At this moment, we'll actually keep this up and refresh by the end of the podcast.
It may
to
change
see if it's
as we speak, although it's in the middle of the night right now. So hopefully,
you never know. Like the sleeping team event might. That might be awarded.
They have to sleep outside.
Yeah, who could sleep outside the longest without any signs of hypothermia?
That's right. So I want to go back to last podcast when we highlighted the brand new Lockheed Martin Under Armour Crotchlight suit. And for anyone who's not aware what that is, just go take a look at the picture of it and you'll figure it out pretty quick. So I love this, and I can't decide what I love more about this story. So far, none of the Americans have won any of the speed skating events.
No. In fact, I've seen a little bit of it, and they look horrible.
They're terrible.
I mean, we don't have anyone... There it is again. Blast.
Amazing.
There's no one even coming close to getting a bronze medal,
right.
Let alone any of the...
So they're blaming, of course, now the Crotchlight suit. Mm-hmm. It's slowing them down. Now it's hilarious because this thing was tested in a wind tunnel, right?
This was the most advanced technology that you could possibly have that was going to aid them in ridiculous ways that would propel them to victory.
It's got the anti-dimples on it, or the
the
little bumps all over.
Yes,
it's got a vent in the back, and that's what they're blaming on part of the problem. It's got the Crotchlight.
Yep.
I
think it's the Crotchlight.
It might be the Crotchlight.
I really think it is. It's like thicker fabric there or something. It's like my legs won't rub against each other.
Well, I
sandpaper instead of something smooth.
It might be. I don't know whether I like more that Lockheed and Under Armour spent millions of dollars developing a suit that has failed, or that the suit actually does work, and it's just that no one can accept the fact that America might not be able to produce the best at every single event.
Yes. Well, and what's great about this is the Netherlands have been crushing it on these long-distance speed skating events. And, since they're ahead of us now in the race of the medals.
Well, and it's not just the suit. Now it could be the food, it could be the altitude,
water.
It could be
the Russian water.
The Russian water, maybe they're poisoning it. I mean, it's just any excuse now why Team America isn't winning.
Okay, this isn't on the schedule, but how about how much we all hate Vladimir Putin? My word, you would think that the guy has, controls set in place in Russia so that at his merest whim, there are armies of people marching to make things the way it must be for Putin to be happy. So far as I can tell, he walks around congratulating people from all the different teams. He seems friendly with everyone, and things are actually going well, other than the snowfall. So
I'm sorry.
Why? How is he bad here? I haven't figured this out yet.
I zoned out for a second. I was thinking about how much I hate Vladimir Putin.
You need to stop watching the Olympics.
Apparently. Yeah, it is crazy.
Don't get me wrong. He's a total creep.
Oh, he's like any other.
He's a
politician, right?
Yeah.
He would sell his own mother out for whatever his political goals were, but. Yeah, I don't know why I should hate him more than I should.
Right, exactly. He's no different than any of the rest of them.
Yeah, no, it's very true.
Mitt Romney's a hero because he saved the Olympics. Putin's a villain because he saved the Olympics.
Well,
oh wait,
it is his fault that it's 65 degrees there.
Well, he's probably doing some serious global warming on his own. He leaves cars idling around all of Russia. Like 3 million cars idling at the same time.
That's right. The other thing about this suit thing is that's funny to me is that the coach himself said there's no way a suit has anything to do with losing a second in these races. Any suit. He doesn't care what it is. So, and it was pretty funny the way they quoted him as saying, if these kids want to go wear their other suit, that's fine. I don't really care. It's not going to help.
Exactly. Right.
If they're losing by that much, changing their suit's not going to fix the problem.
Exactly. And another great thing that this is illustrating is the mercantilism that is so rampant in our culture and country at this time. I mean, Lockheed Martin makes a suit, therefore it will be the best ever because they also make giant weapons for us.
Right. Well,
and we have the giantest weapons of all the weapons that ever were.
The most aerodynamic. They should have made a stealth suit.
That's well, the problem was they weren't accurately keeping the time because the timer couldn't pick up the
clock.
Stealth suits.
That's
either.
a Swiss clock, isn't it?
Probably. The clock's smarter than the suit.
Yeah, Lockheed Martin.
Well, they should have called it the eye suit. Then it would work.
That's right. It would just work right out of the box.
Partnership with Apple. User friendly, even.
I do like also that they were still developing this thing right up to the last second, so no one had ever used it in a. So I can't tell if that's intentional. Like,
now they've got an excuse for failure too, right?
Well, they can't say like it didn't work before or it did work before, right? So
that's true. There's nothing to gauge it against.
So,
but on top of it, it is a great opportunity to say, well, because we couldn't test it in its actual track conditions.
That's right.
You know, that's the only reason it's a failure.
Well, maybe they can get a government grant to test.
Our wind tunnel's broken.
They need a grant to test Crotchlight suits in real competition.
We need that grant.
I don't know about you, but I have no intention of wearing a Crotchlight suit. So.
I have one already.
All right, moving along. I know you'll like this one too. So apparently, we're not only losing in speed skating, we're also losing in the luge, in the track events. And the Daily Mail has figured out why. Apparently, Russia is cheating.
Of course they are.
Of course they are. It's the only possible explanation. And the way they're doing it is they have a guy down in the basement in the boiler room with the knobs, and he turns the knobs up on the boiler whenever the Americans are racing.
Right, to slow things down.
Melts the ice. And then he turns them back down again when the Russians are racing. I guess
and the boiler system is that good that it adjusts
freezes
very
and melts immediately. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a whole 5 minutes in between runs.
It's ludicrous, this.
Well, what kills me is, the real source is the American code.
Yes.
But to gain some credibility, they pick on the poor Canadians.
Canadians said that they think there's a guy in the basement.
And everyone knows Canadians tell the truth. Russians, liars. Canadians, they tell the truth.
They're the nicest people. They have the best manners. Yeah, this is almost like an Onion article.
It is. It's so absurd that. But at the same time, this is why the Onion articles are so good. Because these real-life articles, quote-unquote, are so absurd that the Onion articles start to look true.
We've said this before, but the convergence of real news and fake news is almost like they've crossed over, and now they're going in opposite directions.
You're right.
The Onion has to be careful not to write something
that sounds too, quote-unquote, realistic. Yeah. People won't believe this. It sounds like a news story.
That's right. This is supposed to be funny. So there's your update on who's cheating and who's not, and who's winning and who's not. But in the end, and by the end I mean the end of the world,
or the end of this Olympics, whichever comes first.
That's right. There may be no more Winter Games, and the reason I say that is because Thom Hartmann told me so. So the other day, Thom Hartmann had this dude on his show. I don't even know who this guy is.
He's an expert. He's from Snow Magazine or something. Porter Fox, Powder Magazine.
Powder Magazine, that's right. Snow Magazine, that's what I said.
Snow Magazine, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe it's not really. Maybe that's not the powder they're referring to, if you know what I mean.
Maybe this has nothing to do with winter sports.
It might not have anything to do with it.
So he's the author, Porter. is the author of Deep, the Story of Skiing and the Future of Snow.
Here's a question for you. This is I guess it's an anthropological study.
I'm sorry.
I know you can't trust people that have two first names as their names.
That's
what do you do with a guy that's got a occupation and an animal as his first two names?
Well, that first thing you said is absolutely true. You can't trust anyone with two first names.
Right, yeah. Like Andrew Clark.
For sure. Porter Fox. That's right. That's a made-up name.
It's not his real name.
No way.
Either that or his parents were hippies in California.
And not to be cruel, but he is being interviewed by a guy named Thom Hartmann, who spells Tom with an H.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The only person that should be able to get away with that is Tom York of Radiohead, right?
I agree.
But that's because he's an artist, right? Thom Hartmann is not an artist.
Not an artist, no. So the gist of this story is that, I'm sorry, it's not called global warming anymore, right? It's now climate change.
Yes.
Will end the Winter Games. Now, the only way for climate change to do that is for the Earth to be warmer, right? Because if it got colder, we could have Winter Games like all year long.
Yeah, which I'm not so sure, because it's not global warming anymore.
It's just climate change.
Right, so if it's just climate change...
We should now see a story that says we will have the end to the Summer Games because it will be...
Too cold for them,
right?
You cannot throw a javelin in freezing conditions.
It won't. Well, you can. It just won't go as far.
You can't.
No, it's not physically possible.
Well, you'll never break the records, and that's the only thing that keeps people watching these games. You're missing the whole point.
So we've come full circle now.
Well, and here's my next question. Doesn't climate change really postulate that instead of having the Winter Games in, like, Sochi, Russia, we'll be having them in Honolulu, Hawaii, right?
We'll have to keep moving.
Right, we'll just move to the cold spot, wherever the cold spot is. And I think what's really disturbing is they can't bid these millions upon actually billions of dollars for the next Winter Olympics when they're not sure they can actually have it in their country.
That's right.
They're more concerned about having to move it to somewhere else than they are anything else.
This is actually a boon for anyone that lives below a certain latitude.
That's right, yeah.
I won't be taxed to pay for a stadium that'll only be used one time.
Australia is already considering bidding on the next Winter Olympics.
That's right.
That's what I heard this morning.
Brilliant. This has nothing to do with the Olympics, really. I just thought it was interesting that any excuse to bring up climate change, right?
Oh, yes.
And just how, well, I think you said before we started recording, they used to call people like this alarmists, right?
Yeah.
It's the end of snow anywhere in the world. We will never be able to have Olympic Games again because there will be no more snow.
Well, this is largely where the news has gone, right? Everything's about coming up with something that's more alarming than the last thing.
That's right.
You know, that's what's going to get us our ratings. Therefore, we just accept anything that comes down the line. We don't think it through. We don't investigate. Not that I'm going to waste a whole lot of my time investigating any of this crap.
No.
However...
Well,
we used to have these people that did investigate things and report on them based on the conclusions of an investigation that was supposedly unbiased. Mm-hmm. But those people no longer exist. Somehow they went extinct, or they just... I don't think they're accepted anymore.
No, nobody...
I don't think you can be a straight journalist and be accepted at any of these networks.
You have to go start your own, or do it independently.
Yeah. That's funny. There's somebody doing that, isn't there?
There are a few people doing that.
Weird.
Yes.
Some Jeremy guy and some Glenn guy.
Glenn guy. Yeah. That Glenn guy.
And Laura.
No, they're not journalists.
No, they're not, obviously.
Forgot.
Not.
You're taking us off course here.
I'm sorry. My apologies.
What was I going to say?
You love Thom Hartmann.
Thom Hartmann.
However, this was a bad article.
Yeah, this is not great. Before we finish with the alarmist, the great example of that was, since I have been watching the Olympics on NBC, the 7-mile car pileup on the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
100-car pileup.
Which was just repeated for the last 2 days as if it was the only thing that happened in the whole world. It was on... Brian Williams was telling everyone from Russia about a car accident.
Yeah, on international TV.
International TV.
Yeah.
As if this was
in other news, I made it to work just fine.
I did too. I didn't crash into anybody on the way.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like when there's snow and ice, you slow down and be more careful.
Hurricane Schwartz had the map of the turnpike superimposed with the sunrise, sunset image so he could show exactly why those people were not able to see and not crash into the person in front of them.
It's amazing. You're driving along the road and there's glare on your windshield, and instead of slowing down, you just keep going.
You're going to go around a curve soon, so you better speed up.
Yeah, well, you want to accelerate through the... I get that.
So
people suck is what the point of that was.
Pretty much. So since I've been watching the Olympics, this wasn't on the agenda, but I thought it would be right to throw it in. I've seen more commercials.
Excuse me.
I've seen more commercials than I normally see. Normally people say, "Did you see that commercial?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" But there's been one that really got my attention, and it's a GE commercial.
Can't believe you're making fun of this.
And I will link to it in the show notes, but I can't believe I'm going to make fun of this commercial.
I know, I love it.
You love this commercial.
It's because I make
trains
that love trees too.
That's right. So this commercial is for GE, and if you haven't seen it, it's called Childlike Imagination, What My Mom Does at GE, and it's a little girl talking about her mom, who's apparently an engineer or something at GE, and how she designs underwater turbines and happy trains and medical imaging equipment and
printers that print anything that you want.
That's right.
At any time.
All really cool stuff, right? Very nice.
Very, very cool stuff.
Very cool. But I had a couple thoughts. One was, when does this mom have time to spend time with her daughter?
She doesn't.
She's always working.
She sends her press clippings. This is what I'm working on now.
Here's what my mom did today at work. I know this because she sent me an email. We were joking because in one scene in the commercial, the girl's like in the middle of a desert. And we're like, this is basically where her mom drops her off during the day, and she spends her time imagining what her mom does at work while her mom's at work.
I think it's actually that this girl is seeing the mirage, hoping for water, and instead she sees planes with wings like birds and things like that. Engines that talk. See, the whole commercial is ridiculous.
You said before we started you have no idea what the commercial is about.
I still don't understand it. First of all, okay, what engineer works at anywhere and works on every single one of these random projects that have nothing to do with each other?
All right, so this is the first thing we should take from this. Her mom's a genius.
Obviously.
Who can work on any type of mechanical or electrical engineering.
When she's got 15 spare minutes, she just hops to another project.
That's right. What did you do?
Undersea, in the air, it doesn't matter to me.
I'm an expert in everything.
So, I mean, there's the first impossibility. Then the commercial talks about things like planes with engines that talk to each other. But somehow the planes also have wings and feathers.
Bird wings.
Well, yeah, bird wings. Yeah, normally planes do have the wings, but I mean feathers on these planes. How does that enable the engines to talk to each other?
Childlike imagination.
I get that. But
you can't suspend disbelief long enough for 30 seconds of a GE commercial?
Not really.
You're
Not
just
really.
a heartless bastard.
I am. That's actually true. That's what we should have called the blogs, actually. The heartless bastards.
It's true.
It's just disturbing to me. Like, okay, I've got kids, but in their imaginations, trees don't suddenly run toward trains.
No.
Usually, in fact, the tree moms tell the tree kids, don't run toward that train! But...
Well, the train is now smart and knows not to run over the trees.
Loves the trees.
Thom Hartmann would love this commercial.
He would, actually.
The other, probably more important...
Yes, I'm sorry.
...part of the commercial than the
just ridiculousness
is... The little girl apparently is unaware of, or GE doesn't want to tell everyone, that her mom is probably really not building all these wonderful things. Instead, she's building engines that go into predator drones and avionics that help drop bombs on little girls like her in countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Yeah. Well, those little kids don't matter.
No.
They're somewhere else.
They have brown skin, so...
Well, there you go.
And it doesn't matter that their mommies are dying...
Right.
And their daddies can't go to work or go outside because they might get drone murdered.
Right.
But we have great GE technology to help us when we go to the hospital.
They really should have. They should have had like the little girl at the end should be thinking about what her mom does, and instead of these wonderful pictures of these great things that help people, there should be just pictures of like Hiroshima and Nagasaki right after the bombs.
You've given me a great idea.
I mean, that's exactly how it should be because that's what they really make. I mean, they make some of these other things, but it's a byproduct of making the things that they can sell to the government.
It is. If I can build a new jet engine to go in the next drone, that's great. And I can make a lot of money, and then I can put it in the Boeing 747.
I can also use it commercially.
That's right.
Yeah, it's an afterthought thing. It's not a...
The imaging technology can be used to detect terrorists inside buildings in Kabul. Oh, and we can use it to look at your baby, too. This is a great idea for a commercial. I may have to spend some time on that.
It's disturbing.
A parody of this would be priceless. So that's what I got out of the Olympics so far. You? Anything else?
I've got nothing to add. It's sad and getting sadder. As I wrote to you in an email the other day, our culture. Oh crap! We don't have a culture anymore. Never mind.
No culture. American culture. It's
an oxymoron.
It's an oxymoron. We make a great blog post, Aaron.
Oh. In case you don't, I hate myself for you. It's been how many years since England conquered Wales?
More than I can count.
Luckily, there's one little girl left in all of Wales who actually gives a crap about freedom. Apparently, the British public school... I'm sorry. Oops.
Whoa.
That was a slip. The public school system in the United Kingdom.
United. Is
United
the key word
in
there.
bliss
That's
and...
right. Harmony.
Closed circuit television. Apparently that public school system has decided that in order to get the correct meal at the cafeteria, they now need your fingerprints. And it says here, other biometric data from these minors. Well, this little girl, 13-year-old Melody, has decided that she's not doing that. So she goes to school every day. And when she goes to her cafeteria, she puts on a Guy Fawkes mask.
That's awesome.
Walks in, refuses to have her finger scanned by the fingerprint scanner, and just, does the normal thing that people would do and, takes the lunch that she was handed and goes and eats it. What's great about it is she doesn't just stop after she gets the lunch. She wears the Guy Fawkes mask the entire time she's in the cafeteria. She refuses to give them any sort of peek into her life. I mean, they all obviously know who she is. However, she's just not going to put up with this crap.
It's a bold statement for a 13-year-old.
It really is. In fact, it goes on in the article to talk about her mother and the support her mother's giving her. And it even talks about other students. And this was a great question. This is from digitaljournal.com. They asked, did other students refuse to give their fingerprints? And Melody answers, many didn't want their fingerprints taken, but on the day when the fingerprinting was to take place, there was only me and a friend. She now has had her fingerprints taken, and this is the case with many kids. They don't expect their parents to agree with it, but they're wrong. I'm currently one of the very few who are not going to have their fingerprints taken, but I'm happy to stand up for what I believe in. This girl's like perfect. She's fantastic. If she wants to move here, there's got to be a way for her to be hired as part of the podcast, I think.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's a beautiful thing. Her mother's incredibly supportive. I believe it goes on to talk about that. Yeah, where do you think you got your rebellious streak? I get it from my mother for sure, which is fantastic. I mean, this is what we should be teaching our kids. Her mother, in answer to the question, your daughter decided to stage a protest. Was it her idea or yours? The mother, I think it's Kirsty, says, we were talking about the issue when I signed the form to say we did not consent to her being fingerprinted. Melody is very passionate and spirited and said she wanted to do something about it, then came up with the idea to stage her own protest during dinner time. You don't get better than this. You really don't. I mean, the girl on her own decides to do this thing. At 13 years old, doesn't care about the friends, doesn't care about anybody else, just knows that this isn't right.
This is wrong, yep. I think it's very telling what is hidden in what she said about kids not thinking and not expecting their parents to agree with it.
Right, yeah.
This is what the children are ingrained with, is that my parents are on the side of the government and the school, and I better... they're weighed down under both of these things.
Well,
right?
and if you think about it, this is the thing that's being beaten out of all of us. When we go to vote, we're taught there should be no idealism. You take the best available candidate. Not that there's any good ones. It's just you take the the least
relative,
evil.
the relative.
Yeah,
best,
everything's about removing idealism and removing what you really believe in.
Mm-hmm.
You come to this conglomerate middle section where we all just agree. And this is what they're doing in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
It's becoming this bland, state-controlled, hopeless existence there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how people can live there.
Hanging on in quiet desperation.
Yeah, it is the English way.
Well, I think it's a great way to end the talk about the Olympics, even though it had nothing to do with the Olympics.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's still hope if you have 13-year-old girls who are willing to stand up to the state, especially the British, the United Kingdom government.
I wish Wales had a great slogan like Aaron Go Bra or something like that we could shout at this point, but I don't know of a Welsh one.
We wouldn't be able to pronounce it anyway.
That's
so
true. They'd be all wise.
People would be scared that the next podcast would be in Welsh. That's all for today. Thanks for listening, and hopefully we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode.